Be sure to go to flipsidegaming.com and use promo code 6 for 10% off on orders over $10. Do the same at the Grizzly Gentleman, same promo code, 10% off at checkout. Both of these are fantastic deals, and they help support the show. What is up, Planeswalkers? You all voted and decided that this is where we're going to post stuff like this in the future. So, Theric 6, back with some more magic. I can speak human words. But today isn't Arena, and I made this clear in the voting. So on my community page, I will put up votes from time to time, and especially now that I have a second channel, I do want to make sure I am posting Magic where Magic should be, even if it isn't necessarily something that is gameplay related. Now, one of the stipulations was if I'm posting this here, it means that there isn't going to be a normal Arena video. Hopefully that's fine. But if you don't like this, be sure to vote in my community polls. Speaking of my second channel, go ahead and check that out. I will be posting, so there are some things that I'm pretty sure I'm going to post there and not here, and namely that's the stuff that's like blingy type things. So if I do any more box openings, I'll probably do it there. When I eventually like show my rare binders, I'm going to do that there as well. Those don't really fit the channel as much. Deck techs for like EDH decks, they're still going to be here, but those other things, even though they are technically Magic related, they don't make sense here in my opinion. So today's video is all about Amonkhet Remastered coming relatively soon, 1 week, right? Yeah, a little under a week from now, we'll have Magic, we'll have Amonkhet Remastered on Arena, and I am stoked. And in being stoked, I went through all of the cards from Amonkhet block, so Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation, and kind of just looked at like the cards that were interesting. There are a lot of them. This is probably going to be a longer video than I want, but I don't script things. I also don't edit. How it is. I'm just going to talk about some of the decks that I think are going to be interesting and or fun to build once we get the cards from Amonkhet. Some of these little lists, and they're not full decks, like I do not have the time to actually build full decks. This is mostly for knowing like the key pieces and things. Sometimes these lists will just include cards from Amonkhet. Sometimes they'll include a lot of cards, so I think my highest is like 20 something. And then some of the times it's just going to be a few cards, sometimes just from Amonkhet. Now at the end, the last thing I'm going to show is a full deck list, and that's going to be the first version of Nicol Bolas Control once we get Amonkhet block. So anyway, let's dive into it. This is what I called slow cycling. This type of deck technically can be broken down into several. There are a bunch of ways that you can get general value out of the cyclers that you're getting from Amonkhet block. And this one, this batch of cards is for using those cycling in a slow, more controlling deck. So one of the first things I do want to point out is Shadow of the Grave. This card allows you to return all cards in your graveyard that you cycled or discarded this turn. Now what's awesome is that it's cycled or discarded. So if you want to go with a normal cycle deck, where you just like have cycling, blah, 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 you can. But what I was thinking of for Shadow of the Grave is that you can use it in conjunction with Zombie Infestation and Treasure Hunt. Right now, Treasure Hunt, you have seen some of this with the Zenith Flare. I haven't seen anyone yet use Zombie Infestation. I was going to make a deck on it, but then I realized I'm probably going to get Shadow of the Grave relatively soon, so I want to wait for that because it's going to be cooler in my opinion. So this allows you, if you have Zombie Infestation out, you treasure hunt into a lot of cards, discard all of them to Zombie Infestation, cash out of the grave, get them all back, discard them again to Zombie Infestation. And what's really nice is that all of this stuff is at instant speed. This is instant. This you can activate whenever. This is sorcery, but whatever, it's fine. So, you know, you treasure hunt, let's say you get 10 cards, you discard 4 of them to get 2 zombies, because you're going to have to discard a little bit end of turn anyway. And then on your opponent's turn, you discard. I think I might have discarded too many. Then you Shadow the Grave, get those discards back, discard again. So it's just something that I think is really interesting that you can potentially do. But Shadow of the Grave does help with the rest of the slow cycling. And the way it essentially does that is by another combination with New Perspectives. So New Perspectives, it's a 6-mana enchantment, so it is expensive, which is why this is the slow cycling. As it enters, you draw 3 cards. Cool. As long as you have 7 or more cards in hand, you may pay 0 rather than pay cycling costs. This is pretty interesting when you realize you can essentially go through your entire deck. You can cycle a bunch. Since you pay 0, You can get value out of things like Faith of the Devoted, where you'll only need to do this 10 times in order to kill your opponent, as long as you have 5 mana, and you'll have hopefully enough cards, because even your lands can cycle. Let's see, there was another one. Oh yeah, and then you could also do Drakehaven, where you're just, instead of directly damaging them, which is frankly probably better, you can make a bunch of Drakes. Pretty cool. New perspectives also could work out in a deck where you're just trying to cycle yourself into a point where you can cast Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, and then you essentially have drawn your deck, you mill yourself, you win with Jace, blah, 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 whatever. That's more played out, but New Perspectives does add a decent amount of cool things. What's another nice thing here is that you can just, even if you're not using New Perspectives or Zombie Infestation style decks, you can still have plenty of kind of slow, control-y, grindy stuff with your discards. You'll have Drakehaven in order to make things. Faith of the Devoted also just fine. Abandoned Sarcophagus is interesting because it allows you to cycle things like Neutralize into your graveyard and still get value out of them, right? You may cast non-land cards with cycling from your graveyard. If a card with cycling would be put into your graveyard from anywhere and it wasn't cycled, exile instead. So this does potentially hamper you. Yes, in certain circumstances where you're being milled or something of yours gets countered, etc., etc. But one of the things that you can do, right, is you can, early game, you're cycling your Shark Typhoon, you're cycling your Boon, you're cycling your Unpredictable Cyclone, and then once you get to the later part of the game, you have your Abandoned Sarcophagus out, bada bing, bada boom, you can cast your Shark Typhoon, and then, you'll also have access to Neutralize, and you can put these things together to make it even more ridiculous, right? You can now, you'll have New Perspectives out, and I'm not gonna lie to you, this is going to be magical Christmas land, but you have something like New Perspectives out and Abandoned Sarcophagus. Bam, you're cycling through all of these cards, many of them like Neutralize do something actively, but you're not paying mana to cycle them now, so you're able to just say, all right, my opponent is realizing that I'm doing a bunch of nonsense, so they're going to attempt to bounce my New Perspectives or whatever, but they didn't realize that early game I cycled that Neutralize because I wanted to get a little Drake token to block with or what have you. And bada bing, bada boom, cast Neutralize, counter that spell, get it out of my face. Right, so there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do here. You can have a slightly more aggressive version that uses Reptilian Reflector and just generally Faith of the Devoted and some of the other red-black cycling cards, where you can just, do nonsense. You cycle some things here and there, but your main win con is Reptilian Reflection. Now, this is in slow cycles, so it's not the fastest. We'll talk about that in a bit. Some of the other things, Riel the Everwise allows you to get essentially free value off of your discard, which is nice. Curator of Mysteries is another thing. You can cycle something, and then you're able to scry, and I believe discard this card, draw a card. Whenever you cycle, yeah. So I believe the way this should work, and I could look it up, but I'm a bum, is that you cycle, the cycle goes on the stack, so you don't actually draw a card yet, and you'll be able to scry before you draw. I believe that's how it worked. Don't at me if I'm wrong. But this is just another card that helps you kind of get to that late game stuff. Archfiend to Ifnir, I just like, and I really wanted to talk about it. Boon of the Wishgiver is one of those later game cards that helps a lot with New Perspectives because it allows you to make sure you're at that threshold for cards in hand. Cyclone can do stupid things. If you only have some sorcery cyclers, such as Boon, and then everything else you have is instant or enchantment cycling or something like that, then you can cyclone into well, you could potentially hit more Wish Givers, but you could cycle into some of the ultimatums, for example, from Ikoria, which would be pretty interesting. And then Yudaro is Yudaro. I like Yudaro, shut up. Next up, we have tokens. So why is it that we have tokens here? And there's actually only, I think, 2 cards from Amonkhet that are the main crux of why I added this, and that's Anointer Priest and where is it? Anointed Procession. So Anointed Priest, whenever a creature token is the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. Cool, decent. It's a 2-mana 1/3. Generally speaking, that's fine. Anointed Procession. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many tokens. Now I want to point something out very quickly for you. This does not say creature tokens. This says tokens. So this works really nicely with food and with treasure. I don't have treasure in here because I don't care, but Yellow Goose makes more food. I'm just saying. It's potentially in colors. But there's a number of ways you can do this, right? With Anointed Procession and Anointed Priest, you can go really hard all in on the kind of the black. I don't have any black cards in here right now, but kind of the black-white aristocrat style, where you have things like Garrison Cat, Hunted Witness, Anointed Priest. Then you have the death lady. What? She's holding the Cruel Celebrant. Jeez, I should have put the black cards in here. I thought it would be fine. And then the Zombie Knight or whatever, Woe Strider, things like that. And you're going to be getting a lot of bang for your sacrifice buck, where you're going to be gaining a lot of life and or draining your opponent for a lot. You could even put, I forgot the card. Witch's Oven. You can even put Witch's Oven in here because, as I said, you do get extra food, which sometimes can be very helpful. You can go with kind of a middling creature version where you have things like Brindleshote, you have Nightpack Ambusher, Valerios, and then some of the other like really bigger things. Where the point is essentially like you're gonna be getting larger tokens, but you're not going to be getting as many of them. So Anointed Priest in that situation wouldn't be as great, you know, like, oh cool, I'm getting one big Brindleshote as opposed to 2 or possibly 4 soldier tokens out of my Raise the Alarm. But, you know, having things like Brindleshote or Nightpack Ambusher, where you're just able to, every turn, get an absolute chungus of these cards is pretty nice. Separately Migration and March of the Multitudes are kind of these burst token producers that can make things really stupid with Anointed Procession. I will say that this deck, this selection of cards currently doesn't really use the life gain as much as it could. But generally speaking, it's just a bunch of cool cards that I think would be pretty cool to use in a cool way. Imara, obviously, would be able to create 2 tokens at a time. Omen of the Sun is flash tokens that would, if you have this out, would give you 4. Illyrius is hilarious because, you know, 3 mana for 2 3/2s and the 2/3 tapped is pretty nice. Tower Intensification, with this, it's 4 2/2s in the air. That's awesome. Derek gives you 2 tokens, which is cool, although not necessarily the best. But, you know, the -7, if you're doing a deck like this, probably gets you Thragtusk and things like that. God Eternal Oketra, if you're playing a bunch of creatures that make tokens anyway, so, like, the Oketra version wouldn't be playing Raise the Alarms, but it would be playing Brindleshotes, that's going to be giving you a lot of big tokens. Helm of the Host is a meme, but I absolutely love it. Just imagine putting a Helm of the Host onto Tristani, for example, where they're not legendary, you're getting 2 of them, and they're all buffing themselves by so much. Like, that's just, I know it's a meme, but this is what this video is meant to be. Most of it is just fun brews that I think are pretty interesting and cool. Angelic Ascension would actually be, like, more reasonably played because Anointed Procession only affects your board. So you can Angelic Ascension one of your opponent's creatures or planeswalkers, and sure, they'll get a 4/4 Angel, but theoretically you have a better board than them always. But if they try and target something of yours, you can exile it, and then you get 2 4/4 Angels, which is just even better. Bio Ooze is just an absolute meme because 4 mana to create 2 oozes that each get bigger is quite nice. Elder Gargoth, he makes tokens, shut up, I like this card. I always will. Vivian, obvious. Thragtusk, Thragtusk, it's just a good card, alright? That's it. Tenacious Dryad, though, is dumb because it just gets big fast. You know, Anointed Procession into Tenacious Dryad, this is going to get you to the City's Blessing very quickly. And, you know, as long as you can protect your Tenacious Dryad somehow, who knows, then you'll be able to have just a monstrous board really quickly. Tolsimir, he makes tokens. They are legendary, but hey, it gains you life as well. Speaking of life, I did forget there is one card, and that is Speaker of the Heavens, which can, it cares about the life you're gaining from Anointed Priest, and it does give you more tokens. So this is like the main card, I think, that kind of works nicely with Anointed Priest on both ends there. Next up, we have taxes. This is very bare bones, and the reason it's very bare bones is because I'm still working on my big, huge write-up that I don't know where I'm going to post exactly, but I'm still working on it, where I'll talk about the entirety of historic death and taxes on Arena. And I just kind of wanted to give you a bit of a taste of some of the cool stuff that we're getting, mainly Aven Mind Sensor and Dusk. Those are the big 2 ones from Amonkhet block. Aven Mind Sensor has flash, which is great. It flies, which is great. And if an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 instead. In the past, and in some formats where fetch lands are super prevalent for what it's worth, Aven Mind Sensor is great in those situations at stopping ramp, because a lot of ramp was search based. But because Wizards wants to kind of curtail the amount of searching done because it like makes games slower or whatever, they've put a lot of the ramp into explore-like effects. Growth Spiral, what's that damn card called? The 3-mana 1/1 that looks at the top 5 and puts a land into play from there. Things like that, where you're drawing extra cards and or just looking at the top and putting them in, that has actually made ramp much stronger because there are ways currently to get around searching the library. There aren't really ways around not letting your opponents play more than one land a turn or have more than one land enter the battlefield or something like that. I would love to see a mono white flash creature. Doesn't have to have flying, could be relatively weak, but it needs to be 1, 2, or 3 mana. It cannot be more than that. And essentially it is like destroy all lands but beyond the first that were that entered play this turn or whatever. I don't know how you template it, but essentially it just destroys all the lands that weren't essentially the one land that people get per turn. Or it does something similar where like more than one land can't enter the battlefield during each player's turn or something like that. But something like that would help fight against the nonsense that Wizards is currently allowing for ramp, because Ava Mind Sensor no longer can really help because only few decks ramp. This can help against Scapeshift decks. It helps a little bit against things like Fabled Passage or Golos. It does help there. I'm not going to lie to you. But it doesn't do nearly enough because of the amount of Growth Spiral type cards, Uro type cards, Explore type cards, etc., etc. Although now that Cultivate's back, maybe it's a little stronger than it otherwise would be, but yeah, who knows. And then Dusk is fucking hilarious. And I kind of only added these cards just to show this. 2 power, 2 power, 2 power, 2 power. A lot of the Death and Taxes creatures are relatively small, because Death and Taxes is not an aggressive deck. Doesn't matter what you say, it's not White Weenie, it's White Meanie. Sure, I'll go with that. It's a control deck that happens to kill you very slowly with creature damage. But the creatures generally are quite small. I did want Linvala to show that there are some creatures that will get hit by this, obviously. But being able to just yeet large creatures is pretty good. Now, you might be saying, why is this necessarily good? Like, against aggro, this isn't really going to help. That is technically correct. But against aggro, it's often not as bad. So the matchups where Death and Taxes is okay against creature decks are the kind of the burn style decks, the creatures that are relatively small, low to the ground, blah, blah, blah. The reason it's relatively okay is because we have some cards that have First Strike, and we generally have a decent number of cards that have big asses, right? So we'll be able to annoy the creatures on the board, should be able to stabilize with the larger creature. So we're not going to need Dusk in a situation like that. The places where Death and Taxes fails is against those beefy creature decks with lots of lords, like Merfolk, for example. Creature decks that just have big creatures. Mono Green Stompy is a great example of this. That's where Dusk is going to help a ton. And of course, technically speaking, Dawn will also help. I don't know if Dusk to Dawn technically is what it's called. Excuse me. I don't know if this deck will be played in the main deck, or if it'll even see play in sideboard, depends of course on the meta, but you also get the Dawn of returning all creatures with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. So it allows you to refill against control, although for what it's worth, it does cost 5, and against control, you're probably dead already. But Dusk, generally speaking, is a really nice way to destroy your opponent's big creatures. Then we have this. This is probably one of my favorite ones, because it uses Darkshield Reactor, which I still haven't gotten use out of, Inarchable Tide, which is just cool, and As Foretold. So the main card here, obviously, is As Foretold. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a time counter on As Foretold. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of time counters on As Foretold. I want to point something out here. This is once each turn, not once on your turn. So theoretically, if you have big instants or something, you can pay 0 on your turn for a big sorcery or something, and then you can pay 0 on your opponent's turn for a big instant, or counterspell, or who cares? Because this says you may pay blah, 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 X or less, where X is the number of time counters. But this goes like per upkeep, and that probably is going to be a little slow, yada, yada, yada. Yes, unless you proliferate. And if we're proliferating, why not just have a few other things that care about counters on them? Simic Ascendancy, another way to win the game. Now, obviously, this one is whenever you put one or more counters on a creature you control, put that many counters on Simic Ascendancy. We're not necessarily going to have a ton of creatures, but, you know, Merfolk Skydiver, Evolution Sage, you'd probably have Incubation Druid, the 2-mana Druid, whose name I'm forgetting right now, that can put a counter or proliferate. Things like that, I think, makes Simic Ascendancy still relatively easy to get. And once you have one counter, that's all that matters. Same with Darksteel Reactor. It has 20 or more, you win the game. It's not at the beginning of your upkeep, it's just, if it has this, you win. It's also indestructible. Cool. And then, of course, you can put one counter on it each turn. Oh, we're going to be putting more than that. I'm going to seize. Also cares about counters. You can just make more counters to get more Krakens at a time, which, for what it's worth, feeds nicely into being able to have creatures. Inexorable Tide, I just like. Shut up. It's probably not actually good, but if I wanted to play good decks, why would I be looking at as Fortold? This isn't Commander. Come on. Anyway, Inexorable Tide is just really cool. Just cast a bunch of things for free, proliferate things, make things next turn cost even less. Playing my Celebration is just great. Just proliferate 4 times. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it kind of is. Cards Bastion proliferate, obviously, blah, blah, blah. Excuse me. This is just a really fun style thing. And the reason that Cards Bastion and Merfolk Skydiver are so nice here is because As Foretold allows us to still cast our spells while having a decent amount of mana up. So things like Cast of Ventress as well would be quite nice in a deck like this. You could theoretically branch out to black or white, or I'm not sure there are any. I'm not sure there's enough good cards in red. But I think black or white, hell, maybe both, would be other colors that you could totally get into. The true meme pick, we have equine, or just fucking horses, dude. The damn unicorns don't count as horses. Like, why aren't they horse unicorns? Pegasus. Wait, are Pegasus horse birds in this game? I like don't even. I'm on a separate screen. Pegasus. No, there's Pegasus. Not horse birds. Although freaking hippocamps. Hippocamps are horse fish. What? What? So unicorns, not horse unicorns. Sure, whatever. Pegasus, not bird horse. Fair. I believe hippogriffs are. We have a couple of those, don't we? Nope, that's a hippogriff. Is there a different type of thing? I thought we had more than these. I thought we had horse birds. Like, what are you doing? I don't care about your random tribal. No, apparently there aren't any horse birds. I thought there were. I'm just dumb, I guess. But yeah, freaking Pegasus, not a thing. Pegasus, not horse bird. Which, for what it's worth, technically they're not. But like, these types of tribals, especially because Breaching Hippocamp is a horsefish. It's not a hippocamp. Hippogriff is a hippogriff, not a horse bird. Hippocamp is a horsefish, not a hippocamp. Pegasus and unicorn are both just those, instead of being horse bird, or even just horse Pegasus, horse unicorn. Wizards. Race types should be allowed to be subsets. Right, because as of right now, technically we can't have like half elves or half orcs, because Wizards doesn't do like human orc. Like, no, that's probably not true. I'm sure there are some examples of that where there's human something else, but let more things do this, right? Naga snake, freaking horse Pegasus, whatever. It allows you to have more interesting dynamic tribes. Regardless, Crest of Sunmare, it's a meme. Other horses you control have indestructible. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain life this turn, create a 5/5 white horse creature token. Now, how are we going to gain life? Well, we have things like Honden of Cleansing Fire, we have Nixley's Ram, we have Diamond Mare for what it's worth, we have Shield Mare. All of these can gain you life. Well, these two things can gain you life every single turn. Then you have Shield Mare and Diamond Mare that can, and I guess also that can kind of gain you life. And then we have single one-stop shops of Revitalize and Ritual Rejuvenation to gain you life and draw a card. That'll give you some nice, cool horses. And then, of course, you had Alcid in order to protect your Crested Sunmare, because the rest of your horses, indestructible. This one, isn't, unless you, of course, play an additional Crest of Sunmare. Do you know what's really fun that I totally forgot to add, which I feel ashamed about, is you add clone effects, and you just have a bunch of Crested Sunmares that are just indestructible. For what it's worth, there are cards that remove the indestructibility. All right, I didn't want any of you to hear that disgusting nonsense. But you add clones like I don't remember any of the clones. Spark Double, Replicate, Duplicate. There's others, but I think those are the best ones. And then of course you have a bunch of the mares from the M19 set. Like, sure, it's mares. It's a meme. It's a meme. Mario. Curses. This isn't really a curse deck. It's just a white-black aura or white-black enchantment deck that I thought would be pretty interesting because we're getting access to, well, I don't remember. Trespasser's Curse. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under enchanted player's control, that player loses 1 and you gain 1. For what it's worth, not technically as good as just Sankum of Stonefangs, but whatever. We are also grabbing Torment of Scarabs, which actually is worth it. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player loses 3 life unless he or she sacrifices a non-permanent or discards a card. This can get real fast. Let's see, we're getting Cruel Reality, which is just dumb. It costs 7. But these are meme decks, remember that. At the beginning of each enchanted player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If that player can't, he or she loses 5 life. Ooh, so nice. And then, of course, Overwhelming Splendor. Their creatures are nonsense. They can't do things. They can activate loyalty abilities, which is whatever. But yeah, you just have a cast of other Enchantment Matters cards in black and white. Hateful Eidolon, since technically we are playing a couple of enchanty things with Deadweight and Mire's Grasp. Starfield Mystic to make some of these things a little bit cheaper. Idyllic Tutor to search for them. I'm not going to go over all of these cards. Archon of Sun's Grace to get some value. Ixalan's Binding is essentially a curse. Ways of making our Hondens a little bit better. They're also kind of cursey. Well, this one not really, but these two are. Leylines are generally nice. Elspeth Conquers Death is just a stupid good card. Another way to gain tokens, although frankly, this one's probably just better for this. Exquisite Blood, probably a bit of a meme, but you know, it works really nicely with some of these cards that we're playing anyway. Then, of course, Absolution is essentially a curse. So just generally speaking, a really interesting deck that I'm looking forward to playing, although frankly, I don't think I could... I don't know how I would be able to fit, even knowing that like some of these are sideboard cards, I don't know how I would be able to fit this into a single deck, which makes me very sad. And we don't have Commander on Arena, so I couldn't even put this into a Commander deck. Like, arguably I could put this into a Brawl deck, but I mean, this is already 27 cards, right? Like, there aren't... Since Brawl is capped at 60, it's gonna be hard. Why didn't Wizards cap Brawl at 80? But like actually though, it'd be between Commander and normal Standard, but they wanted it to be a Standard type. Why isn't it 80, dude? Okay, whatever. Zombies. I just wanted to mention like how many cool cards are coming to Zombies from Amonkhet block. Dread Wanderer. It enters tapped, who cares? It's a 1-mana 2/1 that returns itself to the battlefield, not to your hand. Skip that hand nonsense. But you can't you can only activate this if you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. If you're playing an aggressive zombie deck, that is not going to be hard to do. Time to Reflect. I just love this card because I bamboozled so many people with this when during the beta days of Arena, and I just absolutely love it. It's blocked or become was blocked. I can't speak human words. So it's just great. Like your opponent has some big chungus, maybe with that trample. They have Gulta or something. They attack. I chump block with one of my Garbo zombies, and they're like, "Ah, fool! This has a trample or whatever." Or like they equip Embercleave or something, and I'm like, it's time for you to reflect. And you just exile them. They're just gone because it's blocked or was blocked. You can do that before damage is done. It's great. I love Time to Reflect. Shut up. Crypt Breakers we already have, but I'm going to talk about that in a second. Wayward Servant is a reason to run white-black zombies, although right now we do have other... no, there's frigging Wayward Servant plus the Zombie Knight. Essentially, they're the same thing, although for what it's worth, I don't think Zombie Knight has them lose, or has you gain. I think it's just the lose. Innocatra's Name is interesting for a super go wide deck. What is this Discord? Okay. I was making sure, I have a Discord notification. I was making sure it wasn't like directly for me. Innocatra's Name, I just like, if you're going like wide zombies, which I'll talk about in a second. Lord of the Accursed is another zombie lord. In addition to our good old-fashioned Death Baron, we have another 3-mana zombie lord. Zombies probably can be a thing in mono black aggro, which I'll talk about in a second. This also gives your zombies menace, which is stupid. Never to return. It's not as good as Murder Shredder, right? Like, let's just be honest. This is instant. You get a 2/3 with lifelink, and you just cast it. It's just 3 mana. But the reason why Never to Return could theoretically see some play is because you exile a card from a graveyard. Sure, you get the 2/2 zombie, but like, that's kind of just like stapled on gravy. It's additional value if there are going to be decks where you need to snipe a specific card from a graveyard. So I did want to mention that. Plague Belcher is just dumb. Whenever a zombie you control dies, your opponent loses one. It's like, all right, I'm going to be playing Plague Belcher. Board wipe me. Board wipe me. Settle the Wreckage kills you. Any exile effects just make you sad. But it's like, blow up my board. Do it. I dare you. I double dare you. I triple dog dare you. It's great. And then, of course, Liliana, Death Majesty. 5 mana for a 5 loyalty walker. Create a 2/2 zombie. Mill yourself for 2. Return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. To the battlefield! That creature is a zombie. 3 mana. Return a creature. You could be like, I don't have lethal. I do have this Liliana Death Majesty. Oh, is there a Death Baron in my graveyard? Yes. Play this. -3. I have lethal now. Die. And then, of course, -7. Destroy all non-zombie creatures. I love it. Liliana's Mastery. 5 mana. Zombies you control get +1/+1. When it enters the battlefield, create 2/2 black zombies. This is essentially 5 mana for 6/6 worth of stats, which is above rate. Below rate, I don't know. But the way that you can look at zombies, oh my gosh, I have so many. This is going to be a long video. Awkward. I'll put timestamps, I guess, to the decks in the description. Yeah, I'll do that. This is gonna be a long video. I'm sorry, everybody. You can either do a creature-based aggressive deck where you're using things like Dread Wanderer. You're using things like Murder Shredder, things like Wayward Servant, the other zombie dude, just creatures on the ground, like actual true zombie creatures and zombie lords. Or you can go more of a, not control-y, but more of a mid-range route that takes advantage of zombie tokens. So you're going to be playing a lot more, I mean, sure, you're going to be playing Murder Shredder because it's really strong, but you're going to be playing a lot more removal in the early game, and then you're going to cap that off with a lot of zombie token production, things like Liliana Death Majesty, these things essentially, and then a bunch of the other Lilianas. So, one of the 4 million Lilianas, whose name I'm forgetting right now, the one from Core 19, I think is what it was. Oh no, she doesn't make zombie tokens. No, she goes in the first one. I thought there was another Liliana that made zombie tokens. Maybe not. I'm dumb. Who cares? But yeah, essentially you are using a bit more of early game destruction effects, and then at the end of the game, you're just pumping out a bunch of zombies and overwhelming your opponent. Aggro Cycle. The only real card that we're getting here, I didn't really look at black enough, but I think black could probably be here too, is Flameblade Adept. This is a 1 mana 1/2. Whenever you cycle or discard a card, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and it has Menace. That is pretty nice. Obviously, Flourishing Fox allows you to get like permanent value, and it has cycling in and of itself, whereas this doesn't. But the Menace is nothing to scoff at, whereas Flourishing Fox can, just be blocked ad infinitum. And then, of course, you have the other normal stuff, Zenith Flare, blah, 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 all of this. But you have potentially Hollowed One, right? Because Hollowed One was a menace in Modern, I think it was, when they have cycle cards such as, what is his name? Damn, I hate my life. I can't, oh. No, it's like right there, dude. Street Wraith? I think it's Street Wraith. You can pay 2 life to cycle it. So you had free cycle effects, and you could make Hollowed One cost nothing on turn 1. You can't get to nothing here, but if you think about it, right, if you cycle 2 1-mana cycling cards, just 1 mana, this will cost you a single mana. So it's cycle, this. So let's say On turn 1, you play a Flourishing Fox. On turn 2, you play a Drannith Stinger. Right. On turn 3, you cycle again, and then you hollow 1. Now you might be saying, it's just a 4-4. It's just a 4-4. It is 4-4 on turn 3. Who cares? It can be potentially before turn 3, I think. Could it be on turn 2? No, we don't have any zeros. 1, 2. No, I don't think it could be on turn 2. But if you have multiple hollow ones, they all get the reduction like at the same time. It has cycling by itself, which is great, because you can play the 2-mana cyclers, like that's fine. And it is just a 4-4. But just a 4-4, when you're also dealing with a bunch of other nonsense, is not exactly the easiest to deal with, especially when you have Zenith Flare as backup. So, I suspect that Hollowed One and Adept will probably see some resurgence in the cycling archetype in Historic. Mill. Ipnu Rivulet and Fraying Sanity are the main takeaways from Amonkhet here. Ipnu Rivulet is pretty interesting. It is a land. It can come in untapped. You can't pay blue for it unless you pay life, but a single life here and there isn't going to matter too much. But what's really nice is that later in the game, you can sacrifice a desert, which doesn't have to be Ipnu Rivulet if for some reason you're playing other deserts. Target player puts the top 4 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. I think that's just there now. That's not a lot, putting the top 4, whatever. But when you have things like Fraying Sanity and things like Bruvak, that becomes a lot very quickly. Fraying Sanity is a curse. Cool. At the beginning of each end step, enchanted player puts the top X cards of his or her library into their graveyard, where X is the number of cards put into that graveyard from any wither's turn. So essentially, let's say I Merfolk Secret Keeper my opponent. Sure. I Merfolk Secret Keeper them on turn 1. Is this called Venture Deeper? I deep them turn 1, so they have 6 fewer cards. Drawn Secrets on turn 2, nothing happens. On turn 3, I play Fraying Sanity. They mill 2. They mill an additional 2 at their end step. Next turn, I play Bruvak. Trigger. They mill 2 because Bruvak's not on the field yet. Bruvak is now on the field. Let's even say that I don't cast anything else, despite the fact that you're probably going to be playing things like Ops and whatever. Now, right, my opponent milled 2. Now, they would mill 2 again, but instead, they mill 4. And that, it doesn't sound like a ton, blah, 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 but all of this is going to just add on ever so subtly. It's just going to keep adding on. You have Tutelage out, you have Didn't Say Please, blah, blah, blah. You're probably going to want, if you're doing a mill deck that is a slow mill, and this is a slow mill, right? This is not a burst mill deck, even though I think technically Bruvak plus Petitioners is the better version. If you want to play more traditional mill, if you don't want to deal with Petitioners because whatever, I would suggest probably playing some black, things like End of the God Eternals, various other ways of destroying creatures en masse, board wipes. But this is not say enchant opponent. This is enchant player. This hits you. Drawn Secrets doesn't. Oh no, this one does. I was thinking of the nonsense one. Yeah, Teferi's Tutelage doesn't. These don't. The counterspells don't. But this can hit you. This can hit you. This can hit you. Jace. Jake from State Farm. He can hit you. And when he does, you can be happy about it. Well, at least back when we was shirtless on Ixalan. Damn, what is it? Stupid, sexy Jace. Yeah. Yeah, just really cool. Mill yourself. It's fun. Shut up. I don't care. This one is just stupid. This is literally only 3 cards. It's called Chad Tribal. Gideon Tribals has a hilarious 0. You get an emblem with as long as you control a Gideon Planeswalker, you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. It's just funny. You can, +1 prevent some damage. You can make Gideon a dude. You have other Gideon, which also is a dude. You can Gideon sacrifice, so you can have a creature, maybe an indestructible creature, for example, who knows, where your Gideons are gonna take combat damage. It's like, Okay, no, instead I'm going to have my Brash Taunter take all of this damage. Not only is my Gideon still going to be alive, which means I can't lose, I'm going to hit you in the face, or whatever. I think it's funny. I don't know how you'd round this deck out, because these are technically like the only 2 good Gideons right now. Because I think all of the other Gideons cost 6 that are like going to be or are currently arena standard. If we had even just a single 4-mana or 5-mana Gideon that's playable, I think that'd be helpful. But I don't think that we do. Also, I will say, Amonkhet Gideon is like Gideon in his worst clothing, in my opinion. This Gideon is the best Gideon. I don't know why I said big. This is red. This is old school, like, red nonsense garbage. If you weren't around for the early days of Arena, you didn't miss out on much. Freaking Soulscar Mage is kind of annoying, because it essentially means that even if you can't kill a creature outright, you can just force the creature to get, like, smaller and not able to block your things as much. It only works for non-combat damage, so whatever, but it means that, like, you're not going to be wasting a shock on a 3/3, right? That 3/3 becomes a 1/1. Your Soulscar Mage is now larger, and, you know, you just Kenrid them so they can't block, right? So it's a lot of interesting things there. The reason I put Fanatical Firebrand here is because it does allow you, this is non-combat damage, so you theoretically, if you have Soulscar Mage out, you can use your Firebrand to functionally make a creature small enough that it can be shakered or whatever. Or Shaker Kenra. It has haste. 2-mana, 2/1 with haste. Decent. It's similar to Viashino, what's his name. And when it enters the battlefield, target creature with power less than or equal than it, can't block this turn. So have fun with your early blockers. I mean, F you, Arboreal Grazer. This literally comes down and says, no, you're not blocking with that 0/3. Get out of here. And then, for 6 mana, sometimes red gets to 6 mana, and it doesn't have things to do. It comes in as a 4/4 with haste, and it can make something with power 4 not be able to block. This can force a questing beast to not be able to block. There are so many good red cards that I don't know, like, what style of mono red aggro is going to be the best. And when I say aggro, I do mean burn as well, etc. Shut up, who cares? On-Crop Crasher. 3 mana, 3/2 haste. Not bad. Not bad. You may exert it as it attacks. When you do, target creature can't block this turn. Alright. Turn 1, we have some nonsense with haste. Who cares? Turn 2, we Kenra. Force their Arboreal Grazer not to be able to block. Cool. Turn 3, we exert Crasher. Their Arboreal Grazer still can't block. Turn 4, we Hazoret the Fervent. And by now, we probably don't have very many cards in hand. Indestructible haste. Can't attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. 3 mana, discard a card. Hazard deals 2 damage to each opponent. She fuels herself to make it more likely that she'll be able to attack. And if you're in red, and you're, I don't know, top decking lands in a situation where you really need to top deck gas, you can use that mana and that excess land to yeet it into your opponent's face. The nightmares are coming back. And then, of course, if that's not enough to finish your opponent, you have Glorybringer, where you can just be like, hey, 5 mana, 4/4 haste. You know what? You have some sort of blocker on the ground. I'm going to go ahead and kill it. Exert it, deal 4 damage to target non-dragon creature and opponent controls. Cool. It gets hit. Cool. That's great. No, it's cool. The thing is, Glorybringer might not be good enough anymore to see play in Historic, which is nuts. Still can deal with things like Questing Beast and what have you. It can hit land tokens from Nissa, or land creatures from Nissa, etc. Sure, whatever. It theoretically might be a little too slow, even though it's a 5 mana 4/4 with haste. Sure. But I feel like these 3, at least, are going to be decent. And there's a specific land here that is missing. It's Ramunap Ruins, I believe. The reason that's not here is it was banned at the time. I suspect either it's going to be insta-banned, or that I suspect that maybe that's one of the cards that Wizards is going to not bring back at all. Because Amonkhet Remastered, for those of you who don't know, isn't the full Amonkhet block and or Amonkhet set and our Devastation set. It's those 2 combined into 1 minus some cards. I think 383 is the total number of cards in the remastered set. That's some, like, I think it's like 80s or something like that, somewhere around there, of cards missing. But we don't know what those cards that are missing are yet, which is very annoying. But whatever. That's one of the cards I suspect might not be coming. I'm actually going to skip around very quickly. Shut up. You were seeing nothing. I thought this was earlier. There we go. I thought this was earlier. But because I'm talking about this, I want to talk about another card that might not be printed. And that's Solemnity. The reason Solemnity might not be printed is because I assume, I have to hope, that Wizards recognizes that Solemnity plus 9 lives is a combination that that exists, and they might not want this to be a thing. For what it's worth, I don't know if it'd be too much of an issue, because 9 lives has Hexproof, but Solemnity doesn't. So I don't suspect that there would be necessarily any issues with having Solemnity in the format. But if we do, Solemnity, 3 mana, players can't get counters. Cool, no poison for anybody, although poison is not really an issue right now. Counters can be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands. Cool. I mean, for lands, I guess that stops Blast Zone. It's like all I can think of. Solemnity stops Hydra decks. Any +1/+1 counter shenanigans, really. The enchantments one, it stops 9 lives, but also stops sagas. For artifacts, you can use Maze Mind Tome. I legit just looked for artifacts that cared about having counters placed upon them. Put a page counter on Maze Mind. Oh, wait a minute. I thought that was a part of the not cost. I thought that was a part of the effect. That might not work. Learning with Theoric 6. Yep. If the cost of an ability or additional cost of a spell requires putting counters on an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land, that cost can't be paid. If a resolving spell or ability says that a player may put counters on one of those objects, that player can't choose to do so. That cost can't be paid. Never mind. Maze Mind Tome. Just gonna go over here into edit real quick, and we're just gonna yeet Maze. I'm just gonna yeet Maze Mind Tome. There we go. Bada bing, bada boom. No, I thought it was part of the. I thought it was part of the effect, not the cost. Wait, is that the same with Treasure Map? Why'd I just type treasure? I know there are plenty of other cards that have treasure in the name. No, it's not. That's why Treasure Map is not a part of the cost. I thought they worked the same. So here, right, we have cost, effect, put a landmark counter. You get to scry, but you never put a landmark counter on it. But this isn't technically good, because you actually, like, with this, you want for it to flip. But with with Maze Mind Tome, you want to keep it around. Technically, you might want it to get exiled so you can gain 4 life. Why did they make those work differently? Oh, I'm sad now. I'm sure there's other things with Solemnity that you could find. It works with 9 lives. If a source you would deal damage to you, prevent that damage, put an incarnation counter. Obviously, you prevent the damage, but you can't put the incarnation counter, so the rest of the ability resolves. When there are 9 or more, you're not going to get counters on it, blah, blah, blah. When it leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. The thing about this, obviously, is... what's the card I'm looking for? It is a board wipe that costs 3 and can either destroy Cleansing Nova. Cleansing Nova can just destroy enchantments, and if your opponent gets this destroyed, they just lose. And in that specific situation, Platinum Angel wouldn't help, because Platinum Angel would be an artifact. That said, you could theoretically have... Well, no, the thing is, if you have... Well, I guess you just put them in the same deck, right? Like, you have Platinum Angel, and then you have that Boros card, the 3-mana card that gives your creatures indestructible for the rest of the game, but you lose the game at end of turn or whatever. And you put that on there, and then I guess at that point you're more safe, because then it's indestructible. Although I guess you could still target it, so you could still exile it and then blow up the world. Look, technically speaking, this is a combination. I'm not worried about it. God-Pharaoh's Gift. Now, I have this card here because we're not getting it back yet. But God-Pharaoh's Gift, being a combat on your turn, you may exile a creature card from a graveyard. If you do, you make a zombie version of it. It gets haste. Cool. Cool stuff. Cool stuff. Blah, blah, blah. Cool stuff. This used to be put into play via Refurbish, because Refurbish just return an artifact card from a graveyard to the battlefield for 4 mana. Not bad. When you're just milling yourself, you'll get the creatures that you want with God-Pharaoh's Gift, and you'll probably get God-Pharaoh's Gift. Then you refurbish it, it goes into play, then you can do some cool things. But since we're not going to get Refurbish, we can't use it, I'm just going to delete it now, because all I needed it for was this video, because I would absolutely forget it. There we go, visual. So now the way we have to do it is either by paying it, which for 7 mana, not worth it, or by using Gates of the Afterlife. 3 mana, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, who cares? No one cares about that. 2 mana, tap, sacrifice it, search your graveyard, hand, and or library for a card named God-Pharaoh's Gift, and put it into the battlefield. Blah, 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 who cares? You can only activate this if you control 6 more creatures in your graveyard. So how are you going to get 6 more creatures in your graveyard? By using a lot of creatures that put other creatures into your graveyard, such as Stitcher Supplier, Mire Triton, Champion of Wits, Garuda. Right. Stitcher Supplier, Mire Triton, Champion of Wits, all of these cards, technically, not the best that you can get out of God-Pharaoh's Gift, but for what it's worth, getting a 4/4 anything super early is nice. So I also put in some cards that you'd like to get back. Garuda, for what it's worth, is a card that both fills your graveyard and allows you to, is a nice card to get back with God-Pharaoh's Gift. But there's also things like Massacre Worm, where you're going to be able to -2 your opponent. Cool. Ormos. If you draw a card, if you would draw a card while you have no cards in your library, instead you could put some things onto Ormos, and you get to discard some cards and then draw cards. What's cool about Ormos is that if you're playing a deck where you're milling the crap out of yourself, sometimes your graveyard or your library is going to be empty. Ormos would save you from that, which is really cool because I didn't expect I'd ever say Ormos could see potential play in a 60-card deck. Sir Conrad is really dope because he helps you fill up your graveyard, he does damage to your opponents, and whenever you move stuff, creature leaves your graveyard, or when one of your creatures leaves your graveyard because they're being exiled by gift, cool, you do cool things. Gisa, the reason I put Gisa here is because one of the biggest issues with Gisa is that she costs 5 and doesn't have haste. So, with God-Pharaoh's Gift, she technically doesn't cost a thing, and you can sacrifice your other 4/4s or whatever in order to get more zombies. You get 4 2/2s instead of just 1 4/4. So this is just an interesting version. You know, I think you just make it blue-black since you don't need the white for Refurbish. You technically could play white and then also use why can't I remember the name of there's too many card names in my Unburial Rites. You could technically do that and just have Unburial Rites as well, although even then you only really need to splash white, so you know, maybe you put in a couple of white top end cards or what have you, but yeah, just cool old gift decks. And I think Merchant is the most excited about this one. Oh my god, so many more. I didn't realize how much this was. Okay, deserts. I'm gonna go quickly. This is more of a meme deck. I just like Amonkhet a lot because of the deserts. So Hydra, 4 mana, 3/3, Vidge, Reach, Trample, cool, blah blah blah. Technically, you can add this to your Hydra deck as well, but it can be a 5/5 with this if you have a desert both in play and in the graveyard. Hour of Promise is a stupid card that I'm actually really afraid of in ramp decks, because they can just put a couple of the best deserts in, and then you search your library for up to 2 land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, shove your library, then if you control 3 or more deserts, create 2 zombies. You know, you play this with Field of Dead, you play this with a few of the best of the deserts, and maybe even just some of the cycle deserts or whatever. Bada bing, bada boom. You just have even more nonsense of lands entering the battlefield. Desert of the Indomitable and Dunes of the Dead. These are just in here essentially because of the fact that this is the green cards are the main ones that I saw. There are obviously other cards I care about you having deserts, but the green cards are the main ones. And then Chef and Monitor, you get to look for a desert and put it into play, whatever. Minotaurs, whatever you want to call it. We're getting kind of some good cards. Where's the... Oh yeah, we're getting Neheb the Worthy, which is a good old-fashioned... It's a Minotaur Lord, but it is legendary, which kind of sucks. It has first strike. Your other Minotaurs have first strike. If you have one or few cards in your... If you're heck bent, then you get... All your Minotaurs get +2/+0, which is cool. When it deals combat damage to a player, each player discards a card. Helps you get heck bent. You are likely not going to care. Blah, blah, blah. Rage Blood Shaman is a current lord that we have access to. Fanatic of Mogis is like the end goal, which we'll talk about in just a second. But this is able to just yeet your opponent into oblivion. Neheb Dreadhorde Champion is a Minotaur that we have currently. These two are Minotaurs. They don't care about Minotaurs. I mean, Angrath gives your Minotaurs menace, but generally speaking, they're just here because they can be. Neheb the Eternal is just more dumb stuff, very similar to Dreadhorde Champion. And then Sethorn is another Minotaur that we have access to that is essentially a Lord. For what it's worth, I do think that this deck will be very slightly better in Brawl as a Sethorn deck. Maybe a Neheb the Worthy deck, not sure. I think I generally prefer Sethorn, just because... Sethron? I'm just going to call it Saffron. Saffron, because this gives you more Minotaurs for your value. But you can probably make a decent Minotaur aggro deck because of things like Rage Blood and Fanatic, blah, blah, blah. Death Blow. Oncrop Crasher, by the way, is another Minotaur that I forgot to put in here. And that's one of the better ones. I don't know why I didn't. Search your library for up to 4 Minotaur creature cards with different names. Put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. This is an 8-mana card, but just get 3 Minotaurs with 2 red pips and Fanatic of Mogis, right? And that's 7 right there. It's dumb, but it's funny. You could probably make a playable Minotaur aggro deck in Historic if you're in probably up to gold. Yeah, probably up to gold. And then of course Historic Brawl. It seems fine. This seems like there's more Minotaurs. I just haven't put them here because they're a little worse. But I think you could make the Brawl version a little bit easier. And then of course there's the meme. Negativity. This is just -1/-1 counter matters. Most of it is black-green, but for some reason they decided the Scorpion God... Wait. Oh, right. Because it's Bolas colors. I was like, but why did they make the Scorpion God black-green? It would fit so much better. Why did this happen? Right, it's because of freaking Bolas colors. We do have the Scorpion God. Generally speaking, I just like this card. I mean, I have literally right here Scorpion God EDH deck because I just absolutely love the dude. You can have a Scorpion God deck in Brawl, which would be fun, but you would be losing out on kind of some of the cooler versions. You do have Grind to Dust, which is a card that allows you to put some negative counters around, and then Dust allows you to exile things. Sure, whatever. For what it's worth, you can just splash for white. And you can even just use the Abzan lands from Ikoria. Hapatra is really cool. You get to make some snakes, very similar to Nest of Scarabs. Whenever you put one or more counters on a creature, create that many 1/1 insects. So they work really cool. Whatever. But you play Hapatra on turn 2, you play Nest of Scarabs on turn 3, you attack your opponent, somehow you get through, and then you put a negative counter on... I mean, I guess technically you just put the counter on Hapatra. Yeah, I mean, you could... Let's say you put the counter on Hapatra. You get a snake, you also get an insect, and then after that, you can potentially just put the counter on one of the insects to start getting more counters, whatever. Outlaw Spider... It deals combat damage to a creature. Put a 1/1 counter on that creature. Cool. It's like it has Wither. Whenever you put one more counter on a creature, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So obviously works very nicely with these cards. Bannerwhip Punisher allows you to put a specific target on one of these fools and then yeet them into space when you feel like you want to. And what's nice is that this doesn't tap. So if you have 4 mana, you can essentially just play a Chupacabra that has to kill itself. Because you have to sacrifice the Punisher, unfortunately, but whatever. Lethal Sting, you put a counter on one of your own creatures, then destroy a creature. Look, Nest of Scarabs, Hapatra, shut up. How about that? And then Obelisk Spider too, sure. Splendid Agony. Am I recording? Yes. Yes, I'm recording. I was going to record more videos, but this is taking forever. Split Agony, you put some counters on things. It's instant speed. Tormented Venom, very similar, does some things. Tenacious Hunter values from having counters on things. And then if Near Dead lands is a land that can put counters on things. Jesus Christ. It's too much. It's too many. Cats. We're getting a lot of cool cards with cats. We're getting Pride Sovereign. It gets bigger for all your cats, and then you could exert it to get more cats. Prowling Serpentpard. It can't be countered. Your creature spells can't be countered. How cool. Regal Caracal. It's a 5-mana. Other cats you have are bigger and have lifelink. It's cool. You make some cat tokens when it enters. Cool. You'll notice here, these cat tokens have lifelink. This one gives your creatures lifelink, and the tokens have lifelink as well. So I figured, we could hop into that. Cat, we have some other cats that care about lifelink. So Vanguard gives us life. This gives us stronger for the life. This is just a cat. This is a cool cat that allows us to yeet artifacts or enchantments. Kahira buffs our other cats, and she herself is a cat, which is very helpful. The Ajanis all either deal with small creatures, deal with life, or deal with Ajani. Then, of course, War Leader also attacks, makes a bunch of cats, etc., etc. I don't think this is... No, this is no longer Duels music. This needs to stay Duels music. I've been doing this for so long. We passed the Duels music. Cats. It's cool. It's cats. Maverick, or this is technically not supposed to be called Maverick. I forgot what this is supposed to be called, but essentially this is lands in your graveyard, lands in the field. You have, where are you? Ramunap Excavator that you're getting. So you're going to have access to playing land cards from your graveyard, but we already have that in Crucible World. That's very true, but now we have two ways of doing that. So, we have cards like Elf's Reclaimer that cares about having a bunch of lands in our graveyard. Glowspore Shaman puts lands into or can put lands in our graveyard, but also can get them out. Binding of the Titans, very similar. Now, the Reliquary can look for specific lands, which is great. Terravore, another of the cards that cares about lands, but not just in ours, in all graveyards, which is nice. Blah, blah, blah. World Shaper yeets a decent amount of lands into your graveyard. And then, of course, when it dies, you get all of those lands on the field, getting a bunch of ability to do nonsense. Scapeshift. It allows you to yeet a bunch of your lands in order to get things like, I don't know, triggers for Field of the Dead, etc., etc. Gitrog Monster. You all know what this card does. If you can't, pause and read. Because I want to just kind of talk about the cards that are less known. Multani. This just it gets bigger for each land you control and each land in your graveyard. And you can bounce some lands in order to return Multani to your hand, which is really cool. You'll be able to use Blast Zone multiple times. You'll be able to use Fabled Passage multiple times. Field of the Dead, Ghost Quarter, Field of Ruin, Lotus Field. All of these fields you can use to your heart's content. It's a cool deck. Shut up. Technically, you could probably do it with just black-green, but I'm sure there's other reasons than Nether Reliquary to use white. I just don't know if they are. Shut up. Okay, Stompy. We're getting a couple of things from Mono Green Stompy. Namely, we're getting Rhonas' Last Stand, and Resilient Kenra. So let's start with Rhonas. Rhonas can't attack or block unless you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Not necessarily hard to do in a deck that routinely is playing cards like Steel Leaf Champion or Garruk's Harbinger. Cool. You have a big, indestructible god that has Death Touch. Awesome. Great. It can give a different creature, not Rhonas, but he can give a different creature, trample and +2. Really nice. Not all your creatures have trample, so it's very cool to have. Rhonas' Last Stand is a 2-mana card that creates a 5/4 green snake creature token. Lands you control don't untap during your next turn. Who cares? You're getting a 5/4 on turn 2. Now, potentially that is going to slow you down. And this might actually not see play in the Stompy deck, but it's a lot. It's a lot. And potentially you could, like, turn 1 Pelt Collector, turn 2 Rhonas' Stand. This is 2 power, you attack. You're missing out on 1 mana from your third turn, but you play another land, you play Lenore Elves or something like that, Prey Upon even. And then the following turn, boom, you're at 3. You play a Rhonas or Seal Leaf or something like that. Or I guess this will be at 5. So this would be on 4. Yeah, so I guess you play like a Yorvo. You'd play something that costs 3, and then the next turn you have a Great Henge or something. But, I don't know. I don't play Stompy. But Resilient Kenra is also quite cool. It's a 2-mana 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may have target creature get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is Resilient Kenra's power. Eternalize for 6, so it becomes a 4/4. But this is really nice with Pelt Collector, because it allows you, you ETB, and you stack the triggers such that Pelt Collector gets the +2, the +1/+1 counter, because this is bigger, and then you buff the Pelt Collector with the counter's ability, so that you're attacking on turn 2 with 4 damage, which is pretty nice. Then you have a 2/2 and a 2/2, and then the next turn you play like a Steel Champion or some nonsense like that. And, you know, of course, these are here because they're here. I'm trying to speed up, I'm very sorry. Big spells. Why is this called big spells? Well, we're getting Swarm Intelligence, a 7-mana card. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Now, this sounds very similar to a card that we just got in M21. Double Vision, 5 mana. Whenever you cast your first instant sorcery spell each turn, copy that spell, you may choose new targets for the copy. These are essentially the same, except this is for any of the spells that you cast. This is just for the first one. Arguably, like, you don't need to be playing Swarm Intelligence if you just had Double Vision, but shut up, this is my world and I'll do what I want. And then, of course, Summoner's Invocation is another way to just do stupid things where you get even more spells. I have no idea the types of spells that you should be playing, but you should be playing big spells. That's all I know, that's all I can say. Big... I forgot that's what I named this. God, my subscribers are not going to watch this video. Freaking hour long. They're going to be mad at the clickbait after the first 5 minutes. For what it's worth, I didn't mean to clickbait the thumbnail, but I just had to. No, I'm kidding. We're getting the Locust God, which cares about drawing cards. For what it's worth, this is whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blah blah blah, who cares? And then, of course, he has draw by himself, sure, whatever. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking we could put this into the draw second card deck as another kind of top end that also just helps you draw a second card, right? So you have this down, you can pay 4 mana, draw a card, and discard a card, blah, blah, blah. Niv Mizzet kind of works in a deck like this where you're casting things like Opt, so you're casting things like Chemist's Insight, things like that. So, sure, move on. Dimir Scarab. This would be a mix of a self-mill deck, or even potentially an opposing mill deck and a control deck. We're using some cards early, like Supplier, Triton, and Champion of Wits, to fill up your graveyard while also providing chump blockers. You can use things like Rags to Riches, but I just wanted to show off Rags to Riches because it's cool. And then you just use Scarab God, and you just defeat your opponent with Scarab God. This card was super strong the first time. I'm assuming it's going to be super strong the second time. Oh, I'm dying. Trials, another super meme deck. This is a 5-color deck that uses the Cartouches as well as the Trials. So Trials, they enter the battlefield and they do a thing. And then when a Cartouche enters the battlefield, you return the Trial to your hand to use it again. The Cartouches are auras. You attach them to creatures, and then they do a thing, blah, blah, blah. Okay. You can put these with a bunch of cards that care about auras or enchantments. Eidolon. This protects your Cartouches or something. She gets bigger for all of the Cartouches on her, which is cool. And you get to draw spells. These make your things cost less. This gets real big with your auras. Dance with the Manse can return like all of your nonsense. Destiny Spinner makes it so they can't be countered. Wanderer allows you to get lands so that you can cast all your multicolored spells. She makes them cheaper, and she likes to wear them. Mask is big. Siona does cool things. She allows you to make more things to attach them. Cetessan Champion is Cetessan Champion. I think there's a correct order for the Cartouches. I think it's not in order, right? No, Strength is not last. So it's Solidarity, Knowledge. Yeah, Solidarity, Knowledge, Strength, Ambition, Zeal. Yeah, it's that order. Anyway, I wasted more time that I don't have. Sphinx Tribal. Why? Because I'm stupid. Shut up. I'm getting more manic as time goes on, because I did not expect to be recording this long. My throat is killing me. Unesh. It's a Sphinx Lord. It makes your Sphinxes cost less. Sphinxes cost a lot, generally. When it enters the battlefield, you have a mini Factor Fiction. If you don't know what Factor Fiction is, look it up. It's a cool card. Essentially, this would be probably just a Brawl deck with Unesh, which is just cool, because I like Unesh in concept, but I tried to build a, well, never mind, it can't be a Brawl deck, because you have the White Sphinxes, and you want to play those. You know what? Screw that. It's gonna be a normal 60-card deck with Sphinx Tribal. You can't tell me no. It's your deck. Move on. All right, those were all of the lists of cards that kind of work together. The rest of these cards, I'm gonna get to the Bolas deck, I swear. The rest of these cards are just cards that I couldn't really build around, but I felt like they had a place somewhere. So Bounty of the Luxa does some like weird rampy stuff and drawy stuff, but it is, you know, back and forth. I don't know what I would do with this, but I feel like it has some sort of potential, even if it's not like competitive potential. Approach of the Second Sun. This is a win con. I don't know if Azorius is going to play it. I assume they will, but maybe they won't. I don't, Claim to Fame. This is very similar. The claim part is very similar to the 3-mana return spell from Ikoria. So I figure, I don't know, it might be used. You just return a creature card with CMC 2 or less for 1 mana. That's like not bad. And then of course you can get a little bit of value here. I don't know if it's going to be used in Rakdos Sack decks, but it's cool, I guess. Shut up. Trample Tribal. I had to put this in here because it's funny. I don't even think this goes in, I don't think this would work in Trample Tribal, but shut up. Saving Grace is very interesting because it enters the battlefield. All damage that would be dealt to you this turn to you and permanents you control is dealt to enchanted creature. It's another way of forcing Brash Taunter to take damage instead of just Gideon the Sacrifice. So it's another thing like that. It also makes Brash Taunter have, well, I guess technically it makes your, what is her name? True Fire Captain. It makes your True Fire Captain survive more things because it's a 0/3, or +0/+3, so it'll be a 4/6. Sixth Sense. Right now there isn't there's mono blue tempo and then there's blue white tempo. I think you could possibly get blue green tempo with things like Sixth Sense, Lore Scale Quado, and this next card, which is Slitherblade. Slitherblade doesn't have to be into green, but it's another one of these, can't be blocked. It allows you to just do dumb things where you're going to continue to get value off of these card draw spells, and I hate mono blue. Leave me alone. Tempo sucks. I hate it. Spring to Mind was a ramp spell that was used. I don't know if ramp currently just straight doesn't need this, but you do get a land card, you put it in play tapped, blah, blah, blah. And then after a while, once you have your mana, you just use Mind in order to draw more. That said, Spring to Mind was used in a combo. It was used in a certain deck. I just can't remember what that deck was, which is why I put it in this space. Glorious End. It's another you lose the beginning, get the game. I can't speak words. I'm sorry, everybody. It ends the turn, does all of this cool stuff, and you lose the game, except when you don't lose the game because you can't. Razaketh. This card is strong. I don't know how to use it. That's it. Crocodile Tail Demon is strong. I just am not sure the proper way to abuse this card. But I would not be surprised if this was a card that saw play somewhere. I just like Soundward Convergence. Don't at me. You get big dudes at the end of your of each turn. I just like that. Tournament of Hellfire. This is the card I'm scared of. Because ramp, they just get, like, who needs to cast, right? Who needs to cast Emrakul or Ulamog when you just Tournament of Hellfire and your opponent loses, right? Because they don't have a sufficient amount of cards to discard or non-land permanents to sacrifice, right? I am so afraid of this card because of ramp, because of the nonsense of ramp right now. It makes me sad. Vizier of Metafaces, she's just really cool. More clones are cool, I guess. Vizier of the Menagerie, also quite cool. They both only have one cartouche. Oh wait, the Viziers... God, I need to reread up on the Amonkhet lore. I absolutely love Amonkhet block. I really want to go back to Amonkhet. But I think the Viziers like is forsook the right word? I think so. I think they forsook the ability to complete the trials in order to teach. I want to say that's the thing, but I don't remember. Anyway, last but not least. Oh, right. This card, I'm sure, is going to see play somewhere. The Pièce de Résistance. Bolas. This is going to be the first version of Bolas Control when we get Amonkhet. Right now, I don't have a sideboard. I have cards in the sideboard. I don't know why there are two of these here. But I do have some cards in the sideboard. These were essentially like the last cut cards. But in order for me to really have a sideboard, I'll need to figure out exactly what I want. I'm also running 26 lands. It's possible I should be running more. It's possible I should be running 27, 28. I don't know. But as of right now, I'm running 26. Might need to change. Also, I'm literally just using the mana base from before. Except with one more Steam Vents. And it actually should be one more Dragon Skull Summit. But this is the breakdown of things. You'll see it's very similar for the most part. We are now doing a 2-2 of Murderous Rider and Bedevil. Instead of, I think we just had 3 Bedevils. We are rocking 2 Sweltering Suns and 2 Cries. I still value the Exile effect right now, but Sweltering Suns being able to hit X3s is quite nice. And then, of course, being able to cycle is also quite nice. In those situations against control where you just don't need this in main deck, you won't be stuck with it. Languish, generally speaking, a good card. I've really been enjoying Languish kind of above Ritual of Soot, and Extinction Event has been quite nice, but sometimes it does whiff. All of them have their ups and downs, but I'm only racking 2 4-mana board wipes because we'll get to a different one. I'm also running 2 Scarab Gods. This is just another way to win with this card, win with this deck. It's also just an annoying card to deal with from your control opponent as well as from your aggro opponent, right? This is 5 power worth of toughness that it can keep playing every single turn. Unlike Kefnet, the God Eternal Kefnet, this goes straight back into your hand, not onto the top. Obviously, it's only when it dies, so if your opponent exiles it, it's gone forever, sure, whatever. But you can use it to... Shooting. You can use it to come back and again and again against opposing just normal destruction. Hour of Devastation. All creatures lose indestructible until end of turn. Hour of Devastation deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-Bolas planeswalker. You might be noticing, we're no longer playing Ashiok or Angras or whatever. It's because creatures are going to get dealt damage. Scarab God would die if we did Scarab God into Hour of Devastation, but the chances of us like having Scarab God out and needing to Hour of Devastation, I think is relatively slim. Obviously, this does still kill our baby Bolas if we haven't flipped him if we haven't flipped him yet. But that is a price I'm potentially willing to make, because this just hits things. Doesn't matter if they're indestructible, they get hit. It's great. There is no sequence in which your opponent who has a Adanto Vanguard, there's no sequence in which they can like give it indestructible after it loses the indestructible, blah blah blah. No, this resolves at once. Notably, this doesn't help against protection, so if your opponent has protection from red, this isn't going to help against that. But in general, the fact that this hits walkers, this hit walkers like Storm's Wrath, but it doesn't hit boluses, is why this card is so much better. Obviously, also the fact that it forces creatures to lose indestructible is quite nice as well. But many people have asked me, like, why am I not playing Storm's Wrath? And that's because Storm's Wrath hits my own boluses. Right? If I'm trying to win with this, I'd prefer if it stayed around. Additionally, for the 4-mana slot, I would rather have Languish to Storm's Wrath because the damage is different than -4, -4. -4 is going to be getting around indestructible anyway, where Storm's Wrath is damage, so half of one, 1,000 of the other. 3 Nigables, Dragon Gods, only 3. We got 4 of these, but I think we had to have 3 in order to have room for 2 God-Pharaohs. Only 2 because this is a 7-mana card, and, you know, it's a 7-mana card. But, oh, it's so good. Target opponent exiles a card from the top of his or her library until they exile a non-land card. Until end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Cool, we just get from the top random stuff. It's great. Or, each opponent exiles 2 cards from their hand. Your control deck? I'm eating your hand. Deals 7 damage to target opponent or creature that opponent controls, or an opponent controls. Cool, you get to hit something. And then, of course, -12, exile each non-land permanent your opponent controls. Lol. Obviously, being able to have Dragon God out with God-Pharaoh means that you can just consume your opponent's hand, right? +1 on this, +1, this one, +1 here, is 4 cards exiled. Amazing. Obviously, being able to +2 on this one with this one's ability, even if you're going to be +1ing with this, to get your Dragon God 2 ultimate faster is also quite nice. Just in general, I really do like this. This is the mana base as it is now. It will absolutely need to change because of the different ratios of things and whatnot. Blue is very much a side color. We have Thought Erasers, and then the Boluses and Scarab God, but Search Rescant is the only mono blue card, so things might need to get changed around. But yeah, in general, I'm super excited about Amonkhet coming back. I'm super excited about playing this deck specifically. I cannot wait. Even if I lose with it, I will always play Bolas. As long as I can, I'm playing Bolas, dude. This has been a video way longer than it should be. I really appreciate everyone who stuck around. I would really, really appreciate it if you checked out my second channel. My throat is so hoarse. You cannot believe. Yeah, I would like to thank my lovely patrons for the continued support, especially Fogwin. If you'd like to join them for the show, you'll find links in the description. Like, comment, subscribe. My throat is actually dying, and I'm going to bounce. Until next time, all be one.